Alright guys, a little disclaimer before the video starts. My voice might sound a little soft. That is because I am quite sick while I record this video, so my voice isn't very clear. I hope I'm still audible and this doesn't put you off from watching the video. Also, due to rendering issues, this video is a day late, so the console wars have already passed. What I said about the console teams actually came true. Most of what I said was actually what ended up happening. I think the information I give is still relevant, but just so you know that the console matches have already been played. What's up guys, my name is Ivonk, and with the Smite World Championships on the horizon, I thought it would be interesting to just give my analysis to you guys about the teams going into the events and how I think they will perform. And we'll start off with the placement stages, which will determine the last two teams going into the event. This will not be a prediction. I won't analyze every matchup, but I'll just give my opinion on every team and how I think they will perform. If you are looking for a real prediction, I will leave a link to F.Dot's video he did on this tournament. F.Dot is a caster for Smite, so he really knows what he's talking about, and he did a classic prediction on every set who he thinks will come out as the winner. Before we get into the teams, I'll quickly go over the format for the qualifiers. This is a double elimination tournament. On your screen right now is the upper bracket. We start with the console wars. The four top teams of each console league, the PS4 NA, PS4 EU, Xbox NA, and Xbox EU, will first play their own little tournament to decide which two teams move into the qualifiers. Then in round one of the real qualifiers, the two surviving console teams will meet the number 2 seeded minor league teams from both EU and NA. And then in round 2 of the qualifiers, the number 1 seed minor league teams and the bottom 4 SPL teams come into play. And from there on out, this bracket just continues with every set winner. But as I said, there's also the losers bracket. So whenever you lose in the main bracket, except for that console war semi-final, if you lose there, you're out. But in all the other winners bracket matches, if you lose, you're not out. You just go on to the losers bracket and have to make sure you don't drop any more sets, because if you can get through the losers bracket, you also move on to the main event. Now let's talk about the teams. So we'll start off with the console teams. First up is Hype Unit from Xbox NA. In regular season they went 10-1 or 10-2. There is differences in that on Twitter and on the Smite Esports website. They are full of talent, full of experience in the console league. 3 out of 5 players, Wolves, Layers, and Boronic, their solo jungle and mid, were all part of the Astro Authority team, which has pretty much ran the console league past few years. They won Worlds last year, and then you have their support Inbound, who used to be an SPL player but just couldn't make it, so he swapped to console and has been looking very good the past year. And their ADC Crimson, he was actually second in last year's Worlds, so well, full of experience, played very dominantly during the regular season, so definitely a team to look out for. Then we move on to their first opponents, which is Aerial Rise from the PS4 EU League. Of course, PS4 is a lot newer than Xbox, so they have a lot less experience. PS4 started at the end of last year, while Xbox have had 2 full seasons of competitive play. Aerial Rise were quite clearly the top team in EU PS4 League. However, they have to play with 2 substitutes. Their support will be their coach Kerr, and their ADC is Delano 2005, because their regular support and ADC couldn't make it to the LAN, which of course will be a bad look, especially because they already had the disadvantage in comparison to the Xbox players. So I'm not expecting a lot from them. I'm expecting them to go out first round against this dominant Hype Unit team. The third console team playing in the qualifiers this year is Team Rival from Xbox EU. They are also full of experienced players. Predators, Rapio, Dinosaur, and Fly have stuck together for quite some time now. Fly has been out of the scene for a little while, but for the rest, they've played together for the past 2 years actually. They have been the top of EU console pretty much since it started. They got to the semi-finals of last year's console world championship, so they never really have made it to the end. I am expecting them to get through the first round of qualifiers, but again, I think they will fall to the dominance of a hype unit in the end. Then the final console team in the qualifiers this year is Big Money Esports from PS4 NA. It was quite a surprise to many people that they would come in and qualify over Nemesis Esports, which have more veteran players like Matt Kois and Zexy on the team. This squad have only been together for this past split. Snados, their solo, Privative, their mid laner, and Conviction, their support, have played together in the first split. They came in second in the first split after Nemesis Esports, as we said, who were the clear favorites in this league. But then in the second split, Bodilla, their ADC, and My Sweet Potato, their junglers, joined, and they won the second split. Bodilla was actually on the squad which came in fourth in the first split, so it's kind of a surprise to have him on this team and actually qualify for this event. And Sweet Potato didn't even play in the first split, so also a bit out of the loop for the second split, but they deservedly actually made it here to the event. He did play in the first split ever in the PS4 league last year, where he came second, so he's not fully new to the league. None of these people are fully new, but then again, I don't see them beating Team Rival, who just have more experience. So we're moving on to the SML teams now. We'll start off with the number 1 seed from NA, which is Sanguine Esports. They are the only surviving LATAM team. They used to have their own league, but that got scrapped, so they joined the American SML. They are a full Spanish-speaking team. However, their usual solo laner Jarkor is not able to participate in this LAN. So American player Hadix, who's just a high-ranked player, substitutes in for Jarkor. However, he is not a Spanish speaker, so that might lead to some language barrier issues. Their all-round experience, not the most experienced LATAM players which could have survived, but they've all played LAN events before, outside of Hadix, of course. And in the mid-season invitational, this team beat Xbox Rival but lost to Simplicity, so I guess they are a middle of the pack team if you look at SML and Console League combined. The second minor league team is the number 2 seed out of the NA SML, which is Hype Unit, not to be confused with Console Hype Unit. This is a team of 2 faces. Their jungle, mid, and ADC are quite experienced players. However, their solo and their sub are new this year. Russian Papi is completely new, and Gamma played in the SML last year, but on very low level. Sobs and Benny Q have been around for a long time. They were on last year's Armada, who played in the qualifiers as well, got quite far but couldn't make it out fully. And their jungler Mollusk actually played SPL in the first split of this year and had quite his moments there. He just wasn't consistent enough to make it in the SPL. This squad as a whole looked good in the NA minor league. Of course, they came in second behind Sanguine. I must say that the level of play in the NA SML hasn't been all that high. The Grim Battalion actually are a team which got disqualified in the middle of the season, but they did make it in over teams like Armada and Team Cryptic, which also consists of very well respected ex-SPL players, so it's not a complete walk in the park. Then we move on to Simplicity, the number 1 seed from EU Minor League, which is again a great roster. They have Maniac in solo lane, who used to play for NRG in Season 5, alongside some of the best players in Smite history like Adapting and Yamin. In the jungle they have Fails, who also played SPL last year, but he was on SK Gaming, in many people's eyes the worst ever SPL team, but still a great player with a lot of experience. Then mid and support is Death Panther and Genetics, the two main faces of SML at this point. Great players. They played on the Insignium team last year when they made it to qualifiers and Genetics got banned. And their coach Kaysir, who was a gold level ranked player, had to step in and actually looked great. And to round up their squad is Streak Up, a player who also played minor league last year. Didn't look amazing, didn't stand out, but has been looking alright on this roster. Probably the best LSML team coming to this LAN. Definitely a team to look out for, which have very realistic chances of making it to Worlds. And then to finish off the SML teams is Outcold Gaming, the number 2 seed out of EU. They are 4 all-stars, all SPL players, and one newcomer, being their support Breeze, who has never played competitive Smite before this season, but stepped in at the support role at the end of Split 1 this year. Their solo Dimmy is a 2x world champion. Their jungler Frostiak and their ADC Spudio have both stepped in the SPL, but didn't really make it through, weren't good enough to stay in the SPL. And then Pretty Prime is a 2x world finalist and one of the best mid laners in Smite history. However, none of them are in their prime anymore, no pun intended, but Dimmy does not look like a world champion anymore. Pretty Prime does not look like a finalist anymore. I'm not saying they're bad, but they're not as good as they once have been. Still a solid roster who could really make some noise at the qualifiers here. And then finally we move on to the SPL teams, starting off with SK Gaming, who are the clear favorites coming into these qualifiers. Last year they completely popped off in these qualifiers under the name of Trifecta. They won the losers bracket and then went on to reach the semi-finals in the main tournament, where they actually beat E United, who were the reigning champions and were among the favorites to prolong their title. And this is a roster where all 5 players have the potential to carry and have also shown that in previous matches, especially Sem4 Soccer in the jungle and Paul in the mid lane. They didn't always show this in the regular season, where they didn't always play as convincing as we saw them, for example, in Worlds last year. But among these other teams in this tournament, they are, as I said, the clear favorites to win the tournament and go on to the main event. Then we move on to Luminosity Gaming, who come in as the 8th seed from the SPL. They actually were last in the first split of this year, where they found 0 set victories, but then coming into split number 2, Lasbra, Snoopy and Ionic came in for Mollusk, Oceans and Kiki So Cheeky. And actually this past split, as I said, they came in 8th and actually found 4 set victories. And this split they visibly improved. They really found their own playstyle where they really play around their carries, Joshy, Snoopy and Lasbra. Zelia can hold his own in the solo lane. And then Ionic is the person on their team who struggles the most, especially early game. But if he can get through the early game well, he can deliver big time setup for the team fight stage and really be a solid part of this team. So this team is definitely one of the favorites to make it through, not the top favorites, and I also wouldn't be surprised if they just miss out, but this is very much a team to look out for this week. Then the penultimate SPL team and the penultimate team in total as well is Obey Alliance, a team which came in 9th in both regular splits and in my opinion really lack an identity. This last split they only found victories against SSG, against who everybody won, and Dignitas, which Dignitas is a very big name to beat. However, that was in a week where Dig lost both their sets and really seemed to either be trying out new stuff or just not be in there mentally. You gotta give credit to Obey. because they looked very great that set against Dignitas. And we also shouldn't forget that Moswell is still a reigning champion. He won the World Championship last year with Splice, but everybody really needs to be on their A game to make it through, especially Weekend, who has been an important asset in the few victories they have found. And the last team on the list is Space Station Gaming, or as most people know them, Jeff Barra and the boys, who had quite the bad split one, especially with their standards, where they only found victories against the two bottom teams, Trifecta, who are now Obey, and Luminosity. However, their split 2 was even worse, where they had 0 victories in the whole split. They very much struggled to find their place in the meta. They have consistently shown us that they are a very good early game team. However, they just never seem to make it through the late game. We all know the potential of this team. They have the current World's MVP on their squad in Sino. We know Barra can carry. We know Aqua can carry. We know Barracuda and Jeff Hindla won the first Smite World Championships back in Season 1. It's especially Jeff and Andy who will need to step up their game the most. Jeff has really been struggling with the meta all throughout this year, and Andy has just not been able to make a lot of impact quite yet in the mid lane, but we'll see if they can somehow pop off on this tournament. It wouldn't surprise me if they actually popped off and made it through, but coming in as the bottom SPL team with 0 victories says a lot about their current form. So if we were to rank the teams, I think first up, neither of the PS4 teams have any chance of making it through the qualifiers. They probably won't even make it through the console wars. Then teams like Xbox Rival, Sanguine and Hype Unit from the SML have a very little chance if they really pop off and really all outdo themselves here. They might have a little chance, but I wouldn't count on it. Then teams like Space Station, Obey, and Out Cold will have to bring their A game to make it through. We know these teams have the potential, they just have to show it off. And then the clear favorites to me would be Hype Unit from Xbox, SK and Luminosity from the SPL, and Simplicity out from the minor league. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something new. Maybe I hyped you up for the World Championships. Maybe you agree with my opinions, maybe you don't. I am planning to make a similar video once we know all the teams for the main event. Let me know in the comments what I could improve, what I could do different for videos like these. I hope you enjoyed this week, whether you watch the placements or not, and I hope to see you next time.